Okay, C3-Cloud was about multimorbidity, and let me set the scene for multimorbidity overall. I think we have seen it across the current healthcare setting, that a lot of people are living with multimorbidity. In particular, they tend to have greater risks of negative outcomes, such as increased mortality, lower quality of life, and of course, burden to the healthcare services. And in some cases, this includes unplanned admission to the care setting. A lot of people with multimorbidity are facing challenges in getting support from health and care system and managing themselves, their health, and they tend to be less satisfied about the care they receive. So sometimes their experience of people is that too much emphasis is put on their condition and not enough emphasis on how these conditions affect their quality of life. And little attention is given to the wider determinants of health and how these impact lives of individuals and their specific outcomes. So in the context of C3-Cloud, we have seen multimorbidity in terms of chronic conditions. And this included both the growing functional and cognitive impairment of individuals. If we look at it in terms of the European setting, about 50 million European citizens suffer from 2 or more chronic conditions, and 50% of older people in Europe have at least 3 conditions, while a large and significant proportion of that has 5 or more conditions. But it's interesting to see that multimorbidity is also relating to our observed terms of particular lifestyles, in particular a sedentary lifestyle. And we have to apologize. This conference will increase our sedentary lifestyle today, being sitting in front of a camera for all these days. And in particular, we see that more than likely of the average of the population is obese. Of course, multimorbidity is not about chronic conditions only. It's about disability, it's about acute conditions or more severe conditions that they are more sudden than chronic diseases, for example, cancer. And they include people that have increased vulnerability and decreased resilience to seemingly cope with minor health events. However, in the context of C3-Cloud, we will discuss multimorbidity in terms of chronic diseases. We need to have a multidimensional view on multimorbidity and take into account social, environmental, as well as physical factors. And I hope that this is what we have achieved in C3-Cloud. I think what is interesting is that the challenges of this field is that our evidence and our knowledge is really not appropriate, in particular in terms of care and support planning, which is something we try to tackle in C3-Cloud. The current model of health and the traditional way of doing things doesn't help very much shared decision-making with our individuals, especially patients. Much of the health and care system workforce respond to a single disease rather than multiple ones. So even though we treat multimorbidity, we have different specialists that tend to look at single diseases and talk about chief disease and comorbidities, while a movement towards self-management and social prescribing is inhibited by that single disease focus. So I think these are the challenges we're looking as part of our work. And our quest was to solve this problem. And this is our story. We try to support people like Sven, who is treated for multiple conditions, lives in an area, in a small village near Östersund, which was part of our pilot site. He lives with his wife. However, the closest to his other family in Stockholm, where his children are 700 kilometers away. And of course, the people who care for them are different people with different specialists that are in different locations. So C3-Cloud is trying to bring them together with a set of digitally enhanced integrated care tools. And this is also the story we have tried to do also in our pilot sites in the UK and in Spain. C3-Cloud had very high level but very ambitious objectives to develop a personalized care planning system to allow members of a multidisciplinary team that might not be necessarily at the same place to manage and integrate care plans, personalize them, allow patients to be part of that shared decision making, be able to participate and not fall into the cracks between the silos of care, and of course integrate seamlessly through technical semantic interoperability various healthcare, social care and home care information systems, identify best practices for multimorbidity, and of course develop new organizational models and care pathways for integrated care delivery. And throughout this day, we will talk in various places how we have achieved all these high-level objectives. But in particular, for that whole exercise, the care planning is at the heart of C3-Cloud. And later on in the day, my colleagues will give you a demonstration of what we call the C3DP, our C3-Cloud care planning development planning platform. And you will see how this platform brings all the information for all the healthcare practitioners to have a view or a holistic view of the patient, but also be able to communicate with patients. So the next important part is the care team and patient collaboration. And this is a schematic of how, through particular standard-based technology, based on HL7 standard, which will be also part of our discussion later today. And through communication tools, we're able to link the care plan model and the care planning platform to a patient empowerment platform, which has been developed by one of our industrial partners, Medicine. And it allows patients and their informal givers to be able to participate in the shared decision making, be able to self-manage better their approach to their care in terms of their chronic conditions and in terms of the challenge of multimorbidity. I'm not going to go into detail, but one of the challenges in multimorbidity was to go away from treating things as single diseases. And as you can see on the right-hand side of this slide, here we have an example of the two typical diseases we have looked at, or morbidities we have looked at, and we have tried to put together. So through the technology and through our clinical decision support services, and we'll hear very much about this in the coming talks, what we try to do is take standard clinical guidelines, prepare them in a computable form, be able to reconcile them, bring them into a care plan, and through understanding various interesting interactions and potential adverse effects, be able to reconcile care plans of individual morbidities to have a holistic care plan for an individual patient. And this is just an example of what we have achieved. And the CDS has been also a very important part of the challenge of multimorbidity. What we have done, we have looked at 4 major diseases, and we have been able to identify all evidence-based clinical guidance based on the UK National Institute of Clinical Excellence guidelines, but also with local deviations in our case. We have done a detailed analysis of the paper-based guidelines and prepared the flow charts by clinical reference group, our clinical experts that have been very important part of the whole process of producing the ICT technology through co-production. And then we have implemented these specifications, and we have a full software implementation of the CDS services within the coordinated care and cure delivery platform, the C3-DP, where we have achieved almost beyond 500 rules. So if you're interested to look at all the achievements, please look at our GitHub open repository, because this is one of the things we have also looked at to provide to the community some aspects of our work as open source. And you will see interesting how we have used GDL2, which my colleague Rong Cheng will discuss later in the conference today. So to conclude, and in summary, multimorbidity increases the global burden of disease, and of course is a big challenge to Europe. What you will see today is that C3-Cloud has achieved to adopt practical steps to be able to enable clinicians to support people with multiple conditions more effectively, to develop clinical guidelines that they reflect and they address the experiences of people living with multimorbidity. Of course, to include patients, to empower them and raise their awareness of issues describing and understanding multimorbidity. In the current climate of COVID-19, like pandemics that might come also in the future, such scenarios are essential. The type of telecare that we have offered are very important, so we need to see that in this climate. And of course, we have helped to support future outcome-based, value-based health and social care service delivery for Europe. So with that, I would like to thank you for your attendance of this presentation.